So, you got into D&D a while ago. You played module after module. Some the DM, some the player. You've tried out a little homebrew. I mean, but just staying in the Forgotten Realms is caging. You want to explore new realms to adventure in. How hard can it be? Plus, it might be a little fun. You want to start your own campaign setting? Well, I can help with that. Now, let's talk about origin. This doesn't always have to be the place to start when you're doing a campaign, but it is something that's important to think about and will help flesh out your story when you're adding things on later. Asking these questions, again, isn't completely necessary, but it is almost crucial to have at least a history, and having a starting point from which that history derives really helps flesh out your world. For example, was it created by gods? This might have a greater emphasis on the pantheon of your world, as the people here might be more devout. Was it forged by a Big Bang type event, like our own universe, which would lead to different things, and maybe even some dynamics of reverence of astronomy? Or maybe it was created by celestial titans long ago who fought with one each other at the beginning of time until they wiped each other to extinction. Their wars ravaged whatever former world there was, and now planets and realms are on the top of these dead titans. Maybe it was a place like Earth or Faerun, or that realm itself, but changed. Some earth-shattering event split the timeline from what we normally know as this fantasy realm to this cataclysmic event that changed the entire landscape of the world forever. Maybe this isn't a question you have answered, and different factions debate over what is the true origin of the universe. This adds political and intellectual intrigue to your world, and also adds a mystery to be uncovered, which, if your players want to pursue, makes them feel important, because it is something that is crucial to the world that no one knows the truth to. We have our origin. Great. And even if you don't at this point, it might fall into place later once you have a roadmap of where you want to go, or it can be a mystery. Whether or not you have it, let's move on. Let's move through history to what I like to call the second origin. This is a cataclysmic event that changed the world forever. Now, all realms have this. This is crucial to adding mystery between the old world and the new world, because having a world that is already fleshed out, explored, ventured, is one that is boring. Would you rather know where every place is, or have some places still be a mystery? Places that no one has ever been to before. Places of the past. Old temples, ruins, and whatnot. Forgotten languages or civilizations. Now, to get you a better idea of what this event is, let's take a look at some campaign setting events that fit this category. For example, in Matthew Mercer's campaign setting, this event is called the Calamity. It is this earth-shattering event where the betrayer gods went against the other gods, and there's, this great battle was fought, and afterwards the gods separated themselves from the landscape, which changed the world forever. We also have just the Forgotten Realms, Faerun, where the Spell Plague is this event, which changed the rules of magic forever. And then, it could be anything. It could be one different, elemental plane merging with the material plane. In my campaign setting, Krem, basically, the gods had a large involvement in the world, and magic was plentiful. But some people didn't like the huge involvement of the deities in their realm and revolted. This caused them to be punished by the deities in this event called the Severing. Names that are verbs turned into nouns are the coolest sounding. But anyways, where magic from all the people who betrayed the gods were severed from magic, which meant that they lived in this dark, dystopian industrial place where they had to learn to use technology instead of magic and are magically separated from this other world. Also, don't limit yourself to one cataclysmic event. There can be many. Maybe a great god was killed and replaced, or a great flood washed over the land. It could be anything. It could be a great war that ravaged land. It could be a great meteor striking the earth, like our own past has examples of these cataclysmic events. And what these cataclysmic events do is they add, again, like I said earlier, this mystery of this lost world. Your players get to explore because it is something that's been lost. And that way your players are special because it's something that they get to uncover and learn the mystery of, which hasn't been uncovered already. One of the main points of choosing where in this timeline you want to place your adventure is what moment would be the best in terms of gameplay. If you put it, again, later, where everything has already been discovered and all that, there is still challenges. It could be a sort of industrial type game where it's all about these new innovations being discovered, or maybe it's this world has been filled out, but there's other planes that they've just discovered and have learned how to create portals to with their technology, and now there's these uncharted worlds that are being explored, and that way you get to explore both the known and the unknown. But regardless, wherever you want to choose a starting point, you want to keep in mind that you want to make it an interesting place for the players. Conflict is key. Is there a war upcoming? Is there some sort of looming event, like a sort of drought is occurring, and soon the plants will wilt, destroying the whole food supply and civilization? Because you may underrate this, but food is crucial to the structure of civilization. But enough of that. Point is, the point is to have a world that can be explored and has conflict. A world that is resolved isn't one that we see. If you just taken from any sort of plot-based thing, even though Dungeons and Dragons is, not limited to a single plot. That's the magic of it. Pretty much every single story is rooted in conflict. You can't make a movie after the resolution, which is why sequels often fail. Storytelling can be applied to Dungeons and Dragons. That's what it is. People, both the DM and the players, telling story together. And so having the seeds, at least, for conflict, that your players can pick and water. Gosh, I'm on fire with metaphors today. Anyways, then we can have a world that is yearning to be explored and indulged, immersed. Even though your campaign setting will obviously not take place in the past, history is extremely crucial to your campaign setting. Think about our own world, or any world. How much of it is based in tradition, or based in the breaks from it? Our ideas and ways of life are based off of those established by our predecessors. So if we don't have predecessors in our world, then how do we make decisions? How do we get here? It is shallow. So think about our own world. Up to the scientific revolution, we were so much grounded in tradition, looking back to the ancient Greeks and Aristotle's flawed ideas about the celestial objects, that we shun civilization at the time shunned what the world really was, because by their predecessors, what they based the world off today, they couldn't have shattered. It was too much for them. This is why tradition and the break from it is such a great route for conflict. This is often what occurs because the framework of something is always a safer route than something that is new and different, which is why it is often attacked. Sometimes the system we're having works, but when it doesn't, something else is to be tried that is new, and that is where the conflict is created on this historical level. Which, in a setting like this, it is important to have things that people cherish from the past and make up the world we know today. I think you find that setting this groundwork is very rewarding in the long run, and the historical aspect isn't just based in the actual ground and sort of how the world and landscape came to be, but also the origin of species. You don't have to stay the same way. For example, one of my friends did a campaign setting where they did this great thing where instead of Lolth and the main elf god being enemies, they were lovers until they were forced to be parted, and that is the difference between them, or different things like that that change the origins. Maybe some species aren't natural to the world, created by the arcane, like Goliaths could be some sort of arcane creation for a great war, or something like that. Like, look at Warforged from Eberron, they're a great example. You can create your own new races and add new ways to add in the story to add interesting elements. How is each race treated? This is very important. For example, in Krem, my campaign setting, there is, of course, two aspects of the world, and they might be treated differently in one or the other, or some may only exist in one of those two locations. For example, goblins in the magic-filled world are treated as savages, since they aren't a magic adept, but they're good at creating tools. But invention is less revered there, while in the more industrial side of Krem, the goblins are revered for their artifice and are almost higher than rock gnomes. Things like that. Maybe there's conflict between the races. Maybe because gnomes and dwarves maybe both came from caves and mining locations, they fought for resources and have developed a deep hatred for one another. Maybe one race is more revered than the others. Maybe tieflings were revered because they went against their demonic tyrants that controlled the land and freed everyone. Just spitballing here, but regardless, there is a lot of potential from finding the origins of these different species. Maybe it's not always important for creatures and monstrosities, because then you get crazy, but maybe a few key ones. These kind of know maybe a little bit about mind flayers. Like one, I'm going to use another example from my own campaign setting, is the Gith Yankee. Now, the Gith Yankee come from the astral realm, obviously, but in my setting, they basically heralded down into the industrial side of Krem and gave them psionics, and made this one area a utopia where they became revered for coming down and bringing things to the world, while they in return were showered with respect and power. things like that you can really take advantage of by having these different planes, taking aspects from it, and really just making your setting whole with this deep history. And it may be campaign specific, but again, the planes are something to think about. How they interact with material realm. Maybe they're things that are just being discovered, or maybe planar travel is quite frequent. Regardless, or maybe you don't even have planes. How did they get there? Were they created by the gods? Does each god control their own plane? If so, does the ruler of the material plane, is he more revered, or she? Just, again, not crucial, but it's good to have those thoughts in your mind. Let your mind fly wild. And my hopes is to show the importance of history when creating a campaign and how it can help out later. Hopefully, this got you excited about maybe creating your own world eventually. But I think that the creative process that comes with calling something your own is always something to cherish. And not only just have it remote, but things that your players can explore is something that is rare outside of D&D. Now, of course, this is only scratching the surface to what the origins and history of a world can be. But feel free to explore campaign settings or your favorite fantasy worlds, or even our own history has some great examples of the importance that history plays in today's world. Regardless, these are just some ideas. It can be created from this origin or a point that you think is important and work back from there. But regardless, thanks for watching. This is Sean from Dodeca Dungeon, signing off.